Good morning, everyone, and welcome. Thank you so much for joining us today for this webinar on strengthening ties, Danish-Ukrainian trade and investment relations. My name is Izabela Sruviło, and I'm a senior researcher here at DIIS, where I also coordinate our Ukraine Research Center. Today's webinar will take the following format. First, we will hear from our two excellent speakers. They'll have short presentations. After that, we'll have a short moderated discussion, and then we will open the floor to questions from the audience. So please feel free to post your questions and in the Q&A box throughout the whole session, and we will do our best to address as many of them as possible in the last 20 minutes of the webinar or so. As we know, Russia's full-scale invasion of Ukraine has reshaped Europe's political, security, and economic landscape, and Ukraine is increasingly at the center of those changes. While Denmark has been one of Ukraine's stronger supporters politically and militarily, the economic relationship is still developing. At the same time, questions about reconstruction, investment, future economic cooperation are becoming increasingly important, both for Ukraine but also for Europe more broadly. And this is really the focus of today's discussion, how political support can translate into deeper and more sustainable economic cooperation. So we'll look at where the concrete opportunities are for Danish businesses, which sectors appear most promising, and how companies are navigating both wartime risks and long-term strategic opportunities. And I'm very pleased to welcome our speakers today. First, we will hear from Maria Repko, who's Deputy Director at the Center for Economic Strategy in Kyiv, where she works on macroeconomic policy, recovery financing, international assistance, and Ukraine's European integration. Maria has also just published a policy brief with us last week, where she looks into economic ties between Denmark and Ukraine, and this brief is available for download from our website. So please feel free to do that if you would like to read more on that. And secondly, we'll hear from Peter Helk, who's Senior Chief Consultant at Dansk Industry, where he leads DIIS engagement on Ukraine and advises Danish companies on market entry, investment opportunities, and risk management. So with that, let me first turn to Maria, who will begin by outlining some of the current trends in Danish-Ukrainian economic cooperation. So Maria, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Isabella, and thanks to all of you who came here and joined today to listen about Ukraine-Denmark economic relationships. Indeed, very important for a lot of people, and for me including. Let me share the presentation and see if it works. Okay. Now I'm sharing the slides. Could you see that?
Yes, it works.
Okay, great. Very good. So yes, indeed, we have just published with DIIS the policy brief, and like fortunately or unfortunately, we already have the newer data to build upon our understanding what's going on between Denmark and Ukraine. So now I will present you with probably a little bit of dated vision from which you will see in the brief. Denmark and Ukraine really has strengthened ties. Export increased up 39% to pre-war levels, and the 2025 alone gave 58% burst, which is incredible. And I will show you later who was the main contributor to that. Danish firms in Ukraine in 2025 got €1 billion revenue. Wind turbines are coming back after the long pause, and I think overall Denmark is translating gradually military aid and its #1 position in Ukraine supporter to the more secure economic strategic ties. So let me start with the dynamics, the imports and exports. You could see that Denmark has the pretty sizable trade surplus with trade, and it really grew in 2025. So while Ukraine exports to Denmark the goods for around 200 million euros, Denmark exports around 500 million euros goods to Ukraine. And here we see the blue line as a trading surplus. So what is that, and why did 2025 showed such a huge boost, it was because the wind turbines were come back. So I believe the Vestas project with the tech has contributed a lot to this growth. And you can see it on that slide here. We see the increase in wind turbines exports from Denmark to Ukraine. Also, the pork industry did really well last year, and some engine parts, which could be maybe attributed to the energy sector or maybe attributed to the dual use. We really don't know that from the general statistics, but we could see that in more or less detailed level. The other contributor, pretty, noticeable but not that sizable one, was the aluminum structures. Probably that goes for recovery and reconstruction. In the Denmark's exports, we see that the traditionally strong industries prevail, which is wind turbines again, which is farming, specifically pork farming, animal feed, frozen shrimp, and also some other articles like aluminum structure, like vehicles, synthetic yarn, and so on. So with synthetic yarn, actually, the story is maybe a little bit different, let's say, from the other stories, because that's a part of the value chain, which I will show you in a moment. So that is the stories about what was growing and what is important for these dynamics. And here, let me go to switch to Ukraine's goods that has been imported to Denmark from Ukraine. And what is actually very interesting, traditional export goods for Ukraine are oil and oilseed cereals, that's wheat, that's corn, that's all types of agricultural products, also steel, iron ore, maybe some electrical equipment, and also woods and articles of woods. And from all of that, Denmark actually imports from Ukraine only woods and articles of woods. All the rest of the imports is very much linked to the FDI value chains, which is really interesting, because what we see here furniture imports. So a lot of that will show you later the connection with the FDIs. We see furniture import, mainly this is wooden furniture, mattresses. We also see seats and chairs, which is again mainly wooden chairs, because Ukraine has the Carpathian forest and pretty well-developed wood and wooden furniture production. So electrical panels, we see this is panels and circuits, closed circuits, mainly for alarms and the product as such. We see baby clothing. What's really interesting, I looked at the 2024 data, and a lot of baby clothing that is imported by Denmark are coming from Ukraine, again, because of the FDI-linked value chains, because Danish companies are just using Ukrainian plants to produce them. We see synthetic furnishings, again, that's the furniture and that's the interior design branch of business. Also fuel wood, plywood. What's interesting is lifting machinery, and let me maybe show you a little bit in more detail this code. So we see furniture and knitted apparel, which are sold in Danish interior shops and maybe by Danish companies worldwide, but they are produced in Ukraine. We see the woods and articles of woods. Actually, that this is questionable. What was it? Either furniture, construction materials, or biofuel. Both could have contributed here. And with the machinery, it's interesting because it's very selective. So Denmark imports from Ukraine in a maybe sizable amount only the parts for lifting machinery. I believe that's for the producer here in Denmark, and electronic boards and panels. They are both up 36 and 77% compared to pre-war levels, which is really stunning for me. So these are the new selective cooperation, I think, maybe in the making. So how is this trading flows connected to FDIs? Mainly, they are connected through the Danish companies located in Ukraine. We have a total of over 100 firms. They mostly are operating and maybe registered in Kyiv and in the Lviv region. Here you see Kyiv is in the center of the map and with the 30 companies, and Lviv is in the west with 38 Danish companies registered in the region, so close to European border. The leader in terms of revenue, which gives 18% of the total revenue of Danish companies, is JYSK. JYSK is not just selling the furniture in Ukraine, so a lot of big cities have JYSK shops, and JYSK is very popular among Ukrainians. But it also has the production size either like for firms in the Western Ukraine, which have contracts with JYSK to produce the wooden furniture. Mainly, it's wooden furniture for the subsequent sales to the other markets. So what's also in terms of the sectors, what was interesting in Ukraine for Danish companies, we see 20 firms in programming and computer consultancy. They also have a pretty sizable share in revenues, but here we should understand that for Danish companies, these are not revenue centers, these are cost centers, because mostly this is just the teams of Ukrainian engineers, Ukrainian IT developers, architects who work for Danish firms. For example, it's reshaped, the producer of equipment for dentistry. It's some other companies who use Ukrainians as the workforce. So basically, these are cost centers, not the revenue centers. Also, we see 6 firms are working in PIX raising. Some of the companies works in logistics and retail in closing. So yeah, but the biggest revenue and the biggest company is JYSK. So we see that Danish investments, if you again look at the map here, they more or less are corresponding with the general picture of where our investments are moving in Ukraine. So foreign direct investment started moving westwards from the east after the war have started. So Denmark was its central and western situation of the companies is actually in a pretty good position, despite it has some companies here in Odessa and in the regions closer to front lines. So here is where the foreign investments move with the war, and here is also where the economic activity moves in general. And this is probably where Danish companies would also think of moving. So Mykolaiv region is in the south, and that's not such a good location in terms of safety, but still we hope that this region could be revitalized and receive its fair share of capital. So as I have shown you more or less big picture for Ukraine, I will also like to show the Nordic perspective, so a little bit broader view on how countries trade with Ukraine. We see that Denmark is pretty active if we compare with the other Nordic countries. So its balance, its total is just the second after Norway. And the surplus is also pretty sizable, despite Norway and Sweden has higher trading surplus. But what's going on with Sweden? Why does it have such a big surplus? Is because the Westinghouse, which is the fuel for nuclear power reactors, is situated in Sweden, and this is American nuclear fuel, which is sold to Ukrainian electric power producers via this value chain. Within Norway, it's also interesting. I've checked the data, and it shows that Ukraine is 13th largest market for the Norway's fresh and chilled fish. And when I was looking for something interesting in Finland, it seems that Ukrainian Metanvest, which is the big producer for steel and the steel goods, they are in the middle of creation of the value chain with Finland. The iron ore experts are like starting from, I think, zero in 2023, and through 2024, 2025, they gained the share of 44% of Finnish imports from Ukraine of the total amount of goods imported. And Midwest subsidiary Northern Iron Ore, how they call it, with the Finvera guarantee, is buying the Finnish metallurgical equipment supplies. So this is the cooperation, I think, could be interesting for everyone to hear about that. And moving to the other statistics, which is also maybe telling in terms of the Denmark's and the other countries' relations with Ukraine, that's refugees. And we see that Denmark has been actually steadily among the maybe the choice of Denmark was even increasing, you see, through the years among the Nordic countries. It's now even bigger number of refugees incoming to Denmark than to Norway. This is the annual picture of the temporary protection status granted to Nordic countries. And Denmark now has approximately 60,000 Ukrainians living there. And what's interesting is that this is a talents pool which is which remains almost untapped. People with higher education get jobs in, let's say, hospitality or cleaning services sectors, for example. That's the story about doctors, about lawyers, and so on. While Danish companies are trying to build the relationships with Ukrainian counterparts. So here probably exists some skills mismatch, some territorial geographical mismatch that could be addressed through the talents policies, and maybe this could be beneficial for further developing the ties of Denmark and Ukraine. And my last slide for today's investment priority sectors. So from what we see is that the availability of the European Union guarantee and blended finance and some dividends from the post-war recovery, they should be interesting for those who want to maybe try and be among those companies who are selective investors to Ukraine, incentivized by the European Union strategic autonomy, by some moves to the market that's that allows companies to be the early participants and to benefit from these dividends more than companies benefit on the later stages. I will stop here and just mention that all the charts and all the maps shown here are available at Center for Economic Strategy website, and we have the project that shows the economic ties of Ukraine with some European countries. The map is not full, but we are working on that. So here on the QR code, you might see more about Ukraine's ties with the European Union member states. And I will stop here, and thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Maria. Let me now turn to Peter, who will talk about Danish business perspective. Peter, over to you.
Thank you very much. I'll just upload my presentation. There you are. Good. Well, first of all, I come from Confederation of Danish Industry, or just Danish Industry for short. We are an employer organization with approximately 20,000 members. We have a wide footprint with offices around the world, and have since 2018 been actively engaged in Ukraine with a collaboration with our sister organization, the Federation of Employers of Ukraine, with whom we collaborate building the capacity. And from 18 to 22, it was a pretty straightforward journey, talking about the deep and comprehensive free trade agreements and other aspects that relate to a professional employer organization. Since 22, our collaboration took a turn, and we have since then intensified our collaboration so that we focus on also commercial opportunities for Ukrainian, but also Danish companies in both in Denmark and in Ukraine. But let me start with my presentation. Denmark is by no means a foreigner to Ukraine before 22. We, as you can see, we already had skin in the game. We had more than 100 Danish companies operating in Ukraine, and many of them at that time were in the western regions of Ukraine. A number had also been in a smaller number had been in the eastern regions, but in 2014, many of them chose to move westwards. And since then, the business community in Ukraine has been more or less stable until 22. What are the concrete opportunities? There's no big differences to what Maria has already presented. It is some of it is obviously related to the reconstruction, but they were also the same opportunities before 22. Energy and green transition, water and infrastructure, agri and food processing, digital and IT services, logistics and supply chain. All of these were before 22, and some of them have become much more concrete after 22, and not least because of the EU aspect. Obviously there's already a large number of Danish companies in Ukraine. But as you can see from Maria's presentation, it's not as if we have a very strong import and export to Ukraine when compared to many other countries. So there is a need to definitely and also room to step up from a Danish perspective. We advocate very strongly for that companies should not wait for the war to end. It is now that the opportunities are there. There is a first mover advantage. We have seen compared to many other countries, we have seen a very strong Danish engagement in Ukraine from 23 and onwards. We have had a number of delegations going to Ukraine, both within agriculture, and obviously also dual use, but also other sectors of relevance to Ukraine. Some of it is, as I said, obviously very focused on dual use, but we're also seeing that companies are looking towards the reconstruction, and that is within water, and it's in district heating and other related areas. One of the things that is certainly making things very exciting for us is the EU integration. It is becoming a level playing field, you can say, in a way that whereas before 22, and even though there was a deep and comprehensive free trade agreement where slowly but surely the alignment would be moving ahead, you can say after 22 there has been a strong push to adopt the acquis and also align with the regulatory framework of the EU. And that means that Danish companies that are used to working obviously in the EU will find it increasingly easier to work as well in Ukraine. I think that when it comes to subcontracting, there's no doubt about it that Ukraine is a very interesting market, not in basic products, but also in very complicated products. And I think that is a growing realization on the Danish side as well. There is a subset of Danish companies has enjoyed it for many years, and there's a growing number of companies that are opening up their eyes to the possibilities that Ukrainian companies offer for subcontracting, whether it's IT or it's advanced manufacturing. So things are moving ahead very nicely. Generally speaking, and that maybe I should also add to that, we have we built something we call Danish-Ukrainian Business Council, which is basically a partnership between DI and our sister organization. It's called Federation of Employers of Ukraine, FEU for short. And that allows us to access their members. And in addition to that, we also offer various byproducts such as market intelligence. We provide delegation visits, and we also have a very strong connection to IFO, the Danish Export Credit Agency. We generally suggest that you dip your toes a little bit in the water, and then you can build up as you get to know the country. Ukraine is by no means an easy country, but then again, no country is easy to navigate in when you haven't been or you haven't worked there before. So it's no different in that respect. What we very often are met with is the question of risk. And security risk is obviously a topic that cannot be ignored when it comes to Ukraine, and especially over the years since the war or the full-scale invasion started, you can say that the level of risk has increased, but and it is normally, for a very long time, it was very difficult for us to suggest to companies that they should actively consider Ukraine because of the war risk. What we see now is that companies have been able to allocate that risk, and they have started using security companies that can take care of that risk to a higher extent, and it becomes more manageable in a sense. Then there's the legal and regulatory uncertainty. I'll also talk about that. You can say that Ukrainian legislation is evolving very quickly, and you have to really follow that. And that means that sometimes you have instances where one party tells you one thing and another party tells you another thing. And the thing is that legislation is evolving so quickly that you can get wrong advice on that account simply because the people you talk to are not aware of new developments. So it's exceptionally important to keep track of what's happening. Risk is war insurance. Basically, you can't insure against war risk as it is now. But there is a lot of things happening on that. And the Ukrainian government is proposing some very interesting possibilities in that regard, so that it will be possible for national companies to provide war insurance risk that is reinsured and reinsured, so that it will be possible to ensure your operations in Ukraine. When we talk about risk, let me just talk about this one. And it is one of the things that we most often meet talking about risk. It's war risk has sort of been allocated, but one of the things that companies really talk about is corruption. And there's no doubt about it that corruption is a very real thing in Ukraine, no doubt about it. It is something that you find especially in public procurement, and it is something that you can't ignore. But that being said, it is possible to actually operate in Ukraine without ever being exposed to a question of corruption or needing to bribe anybody, etc. It is entirely possible to do that. There are some issues we know when it comes to, obviously, customs it can be a challenge, but again, it is evolving very quickly. And there's a number of countermeasures being introduced by the Ukrainian state that minimize the potential for corruption. And one of them is obviously digitalization, and that makes it easier to avoid that. But as you can see from my slide, there is some possibility that allow you to avoid it, and all tenders in Ukraine, for instance, have to go through ProZorro when it's public tenders. It doesn't avoid corruption in a sense because you can tailor-made your tender, so to say, so that it's basically just one company that can win it. But that means that you as a company will not be exposed at the end of the day to a quest for bribes or anything to that. We strongly recommend that companies look into their partners. There's really good tools for that. There's something called YouControl, but you can also look various registers in Ukraine that you can check up on your partners, who they are. We definitely suggest that you spend a little bit of time looking at your partner. Maybe ask law or audit firms to check up on them, and then definitely don't relax your standards because it's Ukraine. There's no need to do that. Ukraine is a Western country. You should apply your own standards, and it can easily be done so. We will obviously also help you if that is needed. But I think if you just follow common sense and use the tools that are available, then it should definitely be possible to do business in Ukraine without any problems. Here's a number of different tools that can be used, as I've already touched upon them. I won't spend much time on that one. But just to say one thing that is a little bit interesting from our point of view is that the financial instruments are evolving all the time. Initially, for a very long time, IFO, the Danish Export Credit Agency, basically had the market to themselves. They had no competitors from outside of Ukraine in EU 27. But it's extremely, it is becoming more and more, or it's becoming possible to use the same tools from Norway, Sweden, or not, perhaps not Norway, but Sweden and Finland, Germany, France, and so on and so forth. So there's a lot of opportunities to find financing, including internally in Ukraine. There's a number of very favorable loans that the Ukrainian companies can access, and these are becoming more and more common. One of the challenges for many Ukrainian companies is to simply figure out how to apply. And if you are an outsider, it is definitely, if you have a little bit of common sense, you can use a lot of, you can help your partners in that way. Another good example is the Polish agency, Export Credit Agency. They love risk, and they are willing to take on more simply because they haven't had any defaults since 2023 on their engagements in Ukraine. So I think in general, it's definitely possible to access financing without too much problem. I don't think necessarily it's ill-advised to sort of talk about engagement in Ukraine from a commercial perspective. I think it's actually Ukrainian companies are interested in engaging with Danish companies. They want to keep up the commercial operations in Ukraine because that's the only way to fund the state through taxes and eventually also fund the ongoing the military engagement. Preparation is the de-risking tool, and there's no doubt about it. Make sure that you know what you're going into. It is when you've done all your preparation, it's possible to go in without too much risk. Keep an eye on what is happening, but it's not. Don't wait until the end of the war. It is now that we have to act. And as I said, we are ready to support. We have a really good network, not only with the Federation, but also a number of other sectors, and also not only in Kyiv, but also outside of Kyiv. And we can help companies understand the market, navigate risk, and connect with the right people. And it is a people game. So that's a very short introduction or presentation from my side. So I'll stop sharing.
Peter, thank you both for those very interesting presentations and also complementary in many ways. I just want to briefly remind our audience that they can post their questions in the Q&A chat below, and we'll try to answer them all. Yes, this event team mentioned the same in our chat just now. But let me just start with a question perhaps to Maria. Maria, you talked a lot about export-import dynamic and some priority sectors. Could you tell us a little bit more which sectors are already seeing real business activity rather than just long-term interest, especially when it comes to these priority sectors that you listed?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much, Isabella, for this question. Yes, indeed. We saw what I showed was the FDI's value chain comes this bilateral trade integration in textiles and furniture, in food processing, in IT. So these are the sectors that have already seen the real Danish money and supporting trading flows between Ukraine and Denmark, and maybe even further export-oriented Danish industry could use Ukrainian-produced inputs in their value chains in their turn. So there are examples, and these examples, I would say, they are pretty known to people who know JUSC and pretty successful as well. So where do the data show that this connection has not formed but potentially could form? I think it's pharmaceuticals, because it's traditionally a very strong Danish industry, and also we have the biotechnological industry and the pharma industry in Ukraine. So first, because it's a large country with a large population, right? So even now in times of war, it's 25 to 30 million people, which gives a lot of opportunities for biotech industry. And for pharma as well, we have several really well-developed pharmaceutical producers. And also it comes with the talents pool, it comes with the technologies, and it comes with the awareness. So some cooperation probably would not surprise me here in generic production or in something else. Which comes to mind is the renewables, and this is the surge in 2025 experts from Denmark to Ukraine investors. The thing is that Ukrainian energy sector was really heavily damaged. Russia targets Ukrainian energy infrastructure, and it means that after the war and even in times of the war, energy investments are one of the most priority investments for Ukraine, and it would be supported by Ukrainian government. It would be supported by the European Union programs, which Peter mentioned briefly, these guarantee programs and so on. So this is where investments really could make the difference. And after the war, when there will be some reindustrialization, when people will be rebuilding their houses, their lives, definitely the energy generation will be among of the priorities. And with Ukraine entering the European Union, it would be important that the energy is green, including the industrial energy projects. So that's why I think sustainable energy, renewable energy, as well as sustainable construction, where Denmark has a lot of expertise, that would be really important in this next hopefully coming cycle of development for Ukraine. Also, I want to mention defense tech. on defense tech and dual use, where the most fast developing industry and sector in Ukraine, and this could be interesting for, I think, European producers and European suppliers of military tech globally to cooperate with Ukrainian firms to create joint ventures, to benefit from the battlefield testing, from the hands-on experience, and I think that this, however complicated interaction in the sector might be, this would be a really rewarding cooperation for any international that decides to come to Ukrainian defense tech. So I think I will stop here, and yes, thank you.
Thank you so much, Maria, for highlighting all those sectors. Let me also just follow up and ask Peter. Peter, from the perspective of Danish businesses, what tends to move actually companies from this general interest or political goodwill to actual commercial engagement, despite the risks, despite the current situation?
It's a big question, but I think obviously there's no doubt about it. The innovative muscle of Ukraine in terms of new ways of doing basically war has been a very major incentive in engagement from Danish side in Ukraine. And that's where you see the highest uptake of new companies moving in. But I do think that when it comes to other industries, it is obviously that there's a strong experience on the side of Denmark in engaging in Central and Eastern Europe in various regulated industries such as water utilities, district heating, and energy in general. So I think that will, I think as the tools become available and the market, how should I say, the market dynamics changes or the regulatory changes starts to move ahead, then we'll see more and more companies moving. And you can see it right now with the water canals that are being transformed from being municipal owned to becoming limited liability companies owned by a water canal. And you can see all of these changes is starting to happen, and then all of a sudden it's something that the companies can recognize as something that they have done before, and all of a sudden you will see a sort of an uncorking of the market in a way from a Danish perspective. So there's a lot of things happening at the same time. I don't know if it answered your question, but maybe I got a little bit excited about it.
No, it was a complex question, in all fairness. I see two questions from the audience, but before that, you mentioned the Danish Ukrainian Business Council. Could you tell us a bit more what it offers Danish companies who are interested in investing in Ukraine?
Well, basically, it's a platform for us to provide information about Ukraine. It has been for a very long time. It was my basic objective was to change the narrative of what is Ukraine, because a lot of people were of a understanding that basically the whole country was at war. And I spent a long time together with my colleagues changing the narrative and saying there's a Ukraine that goes to war and there's a Ukraine that goes to work and return home and do the same thing the next day. And there's a perfect good reason why you should engage in Ukraine right now. And in addition to that, basically information activity, roundtables, and other things that we do. We also provide some intelligence. We have the Ukraine Business Network briefing that goes out every day. We have various. We have established a shared office in Kyiv, where our member companies can access. And then we have, through our collaboration with the Federation of Employers of Ukraine, an ability to also look for partners in and around their membership. So that's sort of in a nutshell. It's not a very large association. Our main objective is to move the needle in terms of how Danish companies see Ukraine, and also vice versa, Ukrainian companies see Denmark.
Thank you so much. Since we have 15 minutes left, I see two questions from the audience. Let me just read out the first one. Danish FDI-driven value chains in textiles and furniture have proven remarkably resilient during the war. Are there concrete plans or entry points to replicate these successful tolling and processing models in heavy manufacturing, construction, or the defense sector? Maria, would you like to say something about that one, or?
Yeah, I think that while Ukraine has this benefit of being really geographically a big country, there are safe regions which relatively safe, obviously, because of missiles. Nowhere is safe, but relatively safe, where the investments could still go. And I think that we have enough potential in not just the textiles, but also, as I mentioned, pharma. Also, maybe some sectors that could be interesting again for the Scandinavian producers is the woodworks. For example, the 2025 saw a lot of investments, and then now I'm talking about the fresh equity, not about the reinvestment of profits, specifically in the wood works and production of wood elements. So this is maybe the sector that would be interesting. But again, right, it should be responsible looking at the Carpathian forest. Then electronics and nearshoring of all the maybe components that are now being produced in China. If we're talking about the complicated chip production, maybe not, but if we're talking about the electric circuits, which are maybe a little simpler, then Ukraine has and can offer the existing engineering base and production even facilities, because it was in the Soviet times. I don't know, maybe not all of you know that, but during the Soviet times, Ukraine has been the base of the production, for example, for the spaceships, for the airplanes, for a lot of sophisticated machinery, and we still have the engineer base and the production base inherited from that time. So the School of Mathematicians, the School of Engineers, this school is now showing its success in the military and dual-use production, but also could, of course, be this potential could be tapped if we are talking about replacing China in the components market, which is important for Europe. Also, I maybe just mention quickly the critical raw materials. I think titanium, lithium, the rest of the leaf table, right? It's almost all could be found in Ukraine in these or that states. So maybe going into this direction could also be beneficial.
Thank you so much. And the second question is, Denmark is a global leader in wind energy and energy efficiency, and Ukraine desperately needs a decentralized, resilient power grid. Given the high security risks to critical infrastructure, what models of cooperation are realistic for Danish energy firms in Ukraine today, rather than waiting for post-war reconstruction? I wonder if, Peter, you would like to say perhaps anything on that?
Yeah, well, I think most of the decentralized, well, basically it's the Ukrainian companies that buy Danish technology in this area. We have the rather big windmill park to the south, which is DTEC owned, and they bought Vestas windmills. And you can say to a certain extent that is the risk is not so much of a Danish company, it is a Ukrainian company that bears the risk. The good thing about windmills is that they are exceptionally hard to take out, because they comes in several numbers and not only one. So if you take out one, the other one still spins, so to say. But that being said, we see a really significant uptake in that particular area on renewables and not only windmills but also biomass, and I think that is where it's popping up in the agricultural sector, and it is a risk that the individual company in Ukraine is willing to take, and they see it as it is a risk that is it's possible to work with, so to say. I wouldn't be too worried about energy, wind energy, and energy in general. It's more, you can say, these centralized, for instance, district heating, or it's these already known, how should I say, energy producing facilities. They are a bit tricky, but there the Ukrainian are becoming better and better in protecting them, and that means that the investment that has been done is still being taken care of, or probably guarded, so to say.
Thank you so much. I don't see more questions from the audience. Perhaps I could ask both of you just for some reflections on the very topic of the conversation around risks and Ukraine, because that conversation can also shape economic outcomes. So Ukraine is often seen and discussed precisely through this lens of uncertainty and vulnerability, and this can limit to what extent businesses want to get engaged. So the risk is also that reconstruction will remain heavily donor-driven. Is there something that we could do on our side as researchers, policymakers, business sector representatives to basically build a more balanced picture of risk, and how, in a way that it would reflect more the business experience and economic activity that is already taking place on the ground in Ukraine? Peter, perhaps would you like to
Yeah.
start?
I believe that we can do more as both as business but also as researchers, in trying to get a better view of the actual risk of doing business in Ukraine. Because I do think that it's very skewed, the risk perception. Not that we want to not acknowledge the risk, but we need to understand the risk better. That's one thing. The other thing is that I do believe that there's a tendency to think that the whole reconstruction will be driven by donors. I think there is a very strong appetite on the side of the Ukrainian businesses in doing their own reconstruction. But I think, maybe repeating myself because I was in a different DIIS engagement last week, I think that the biggest challenge for Ukraine ahead of it is EU integration. And that is what drives everything right now, and needs a whole of Ukraine approach. It cannot only be the government of Ukraine or donors or or if EU is not considered a donor, but sort of an actor, a different actor. But the private sector really needs to engage in this in order to be prepared for that. And whether it comes before the war ends or after the war ends, I think it's irrelevant. I think the time to act for Ukrainian industry is now.
Thank you so much, Maria. Would you like to add something to that, perhaps?
Yeah, there was actually one interesting initiative by insurance companies. If I'm not mistaken, it's Marsh McLennan and the UN. So what they did is they collected the data set of the actual accidents, so-called, which has happened in Ukraine's territory, and showing to foreign businesses that Ukraine is a big country. That what you have in Zaporizhia or Dnipro region, the situation is very different in Chernivtsi or or some other region. And also maybe what's important to Ukrainian government and to all the European maybe counterparties is that if we want to keep investors' interest, then it's very important to provide more Patriots, more anti-aircraft protection to Ukraine, and all the actors who have any possibility of talking to stakeholders, they should talk about that. So because this is very important, not just because of the security, but also because of retaining the economic activity. This is one of the key priorities for a lot of us at the moment, especially after Iran war have started. So this is one of the good security reasons. And also I just want to mention that one of the changes in regulations, I don't know if Peter's companies were using that or not. That would be very interesting for me to hear if you have this practice. But in theory, Ukrainian companies are allowed to create their own anti-aircraft missiles brigades. So basically, yes, if you are a big company and you want to make investment and you want to ensure that it will be okay. So basically, you are allowed to create a military facility that would be protecting it. I don't know if anyone has this experience, but yeah, that's theoretically possible.
Thank you so much. We have just a couple of minutes left. We have one more question here about Ukrainian community in Denmark, which is a massive potential bridge for long-term bilateral cooperation. And how can Danish business associations better strategize and utilize this diaspora talent to facilitate market entry and manage cross-border operations? Could I just ask for a very short comment on that from you, Maria, before we close?
Yeah, this is what I actually briefly mentioned. If Danish companies are interested in going, let's say, to Ukraine after the war, during the war, that would be the opportunity to create the talents pool that they could tap. Because again, in Ukraine, one of the consequences of the war is the big shift in the population and the talents pool, right? So we have migration, we have draft, we have a lot of things happening, and it is more and more difficult for companies to get these skilled professionals. While here in Denmark, there are 60,000 Ukrainians just waiting to be educated, and the Danish government, they provide paid internships, right? So for all those who want to find work here in Denmark and who works with the employment organization. I mean, I'm not really very good at these terms in Danish way, but those who work with Danish government to find the job for themselves, they are able to go for internship. And I wonder why those companies who are interested in going to Ukrainian market maybe in future will not use this opportunity to get the Ukrainian workers. Okay, that would be, I think, it from me.
Thank you so much. We are out of time, so big thank you to our excellent speakers and to audience who joined and also engaged in posting the questions. I think the discussion really highlighted both the opportunities or complexities of developing stronger economic cooperation between the two countries. For anyone interested in more topics related to recovery and reconstruction of Ukraine, please follow us here also at DIIS, where we do research on different related themes. And with that, thank you again for joining us, and have a nice day, everyone.